and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Goodness.
We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. This meeting is being recorded and televised by the local cable company. I'd like a motion for the approval of bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
A motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Public forum. Is anyone here who wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Now's the time to do it. Approval of meeting minutes, open session, November 15th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Open session, December 13th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And open session, January 4, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to be having a joint meeting with the Finance Committee tonight. The Fire Chief is going to make his budget presentation. I was under the impression it was going to be at 7, but apparently it's going to be at 7:15 because they're meeting with the Board of Health right now, so we can get some business done ahead of time. I want to mention that the Whitman Hanson cheerleaders won the national championship down in Texas over the weekend, so I want to give some congratulations to them.
Well done.
And I thought about doing this during the moment of silence, but I didn't want to confuse the distinction between the church and state. We might want to keep in our thoughts Governor Baker. He's about to make his State of the Commonwealth address today, and I'm sure we wish him the best of luck doing that. Act on the request for toll booth fundraisers submitted by the Whitman Baseball and Softball Association, the Knights of Columbus, the American Legion, and the Whitman Area Toy Drive. They were the only 4 that applied to do fundraisers.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I should note that the Whitman Area Fund Drive is a new charity. Mr. Westhaver, Donnie Westhaver, who has headed up the town's Area Toys for Tots drive, has expanded it to include these other functions. So we do have an application from him. We do have an application for tax exempt status. They don't actually have it now, but should have it by the time.
By the time. And apparently the dates, none of the dates that they asked for are dates that we have suggested they don't do it on. Okay. Like Mother's Day weekend or Easter or whatever. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Act on the recommendation of the town administrator to appoint Christine Lloyd to the position of member of the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term through June 30th, 2019 in order to fill an existing vacancy.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the resignation of Wayne Carroll from the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditures Committee effective January 18th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Chief Greno to declare 2 Space Lab defibrillators as surplus equipment.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions of the chief? All those in favor?
Aye.
Monthly reports, police and fire. General Benton, would you like to step to the podium?
Promotion. Should come with a hefty.
4 stars.
40%.
Hey, you know, I'll take it.
Yeah. We have read it. Chief, I want to thank you for doing the comparison between last year and this year. It helps to get things in perspective. And as you know, I was watching the opioid overdose movement from one year to the next. And you stated it well. It's not an eye-dropping change, but it's a change.
Yeah, in the right direction, that's
And you
for sure.
encourage people once again to get involved with the Whitman Hanson Will Coalition. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're actually, and now there's a much more comprehensive attack on the follow-ups, and the reporting of overdoses more in a timely fashion. So Lieutenant Conley, who does the reporting to Chief Allen in East Bridgewater, what's going on right now is typically it would get forwarded within, maybe a week or days, and then there's a follow-up, but it could be 2 weeks out. Now, if there's like an overdose now, within an hour, it's going to get reported, and within a day, there's a follow-up, so it's immediate. Instead of
Okay.
offering the family and them, a week later, it's like a day or two later. So we're just trying to tighten things up, and it's a much better approach, so. And actually, speaking of that, there was an interesting, the Colorado Supreme Court decided in part on part of the, and it was the medical marijuana part, where a person was growing marijuana and cultivating it, and they had a case. And in the case, the person was found not guilty, so they wanted the police to give them back all of their product. So the Colorado appealed it, saying that it's in violation of federal law. And what the Supreme Court of Colorado ruled was the Federal Controlled Substances Act prohibits the distribution of marijuana with limited exceptions. So they found that the police department would be violating that by giving it back. So, they sent it out and said it could impact, it was directed at one portion, but it could impact, others. So, do you have any questions on what, or do you just want me to go through a quick?
I have a couple, just actually a comment. I read there yesterday, I believe it was. I was a little disappointed that Governor Baker was cutting the budget for the opioid situation we have here in the Commonwealth. I think it was 1.9 million, which really it bothered me. And I don't know if you saw any breakdowns of where that's going to be affected, but to me, it's not the place to be cutting right now.
No.
And I was a little disappointed. I haven't seen any details of how it's going to be, where it's going to be cut exactly.
My only comment to that would be any cuts
Right.
in that area are just, if anything, I'd want to hear we're putting more money into it,
Right.
because any money to any of those components in that matrix is vital, so,
Yeah.
that's sad.
I,
I'm not surprised, it's,
I understand the fiscal crisis and all, but maybe it could have been taken from somewhere else. But the other thing was, I know that with all the talk of medical marijuana and the recreational side, the state legislature has got some proposals now to really tune it up quite a ways, cutting back the amount that folks can grow at home, and
Well, yeah.
when it can roll out, and it's going to be pushed way back, I think, if this goes through, so.
I can tell you, I know that the Mass police chiefs have been lobbying. I mean, this thing got passed, and I'm telling you, there was nobody thinking on the recreational component
Right.
of what the ramifications were. Like, it was brought up, like the medical place, that is all regulated. It's all everything has to pass through its things. It's your neighbor who can grow 12 plants, but's growing 36 that decides to extract it with butane that blows your house up and their house
Right.
up. That's where the problem is going to
the
come
problem.
from. It's not going to be from a facility like
I
that.
don't think anybody expected this to pass, and then I think everybody got caught with their pants down, pardon the pun, but I think that it's needs some fine tuning, and I think that there's probably,
I didn't understand the pun.
yeah, well, I'm not going to explain it, but
Well, it's tough. It's tough. The old saying is it's tough to put the toothpaste back in the tube. So,
exactly. I just, to me, I think the longer they take to try to
Yeah.
fine tune that part of it, the better we'll be.
and we can defeat the retail, like I said, on a ballot question in our annual election. Is the most direct way.
Yeah, I think that's imperative that we do that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, do you want to highlight some other things, Chief, or do you want to?
Sure. I mean, I'll just go over quickly. So we were up in our call volume. It increased 616 over the course of the year. arrests and complaints, protective custody was about the same, 446, dropped to it was 445 last year, went up 1. Citations were up for traffic enforcement, about 300. Our overdoses and stuff, which, is any stride that you can make in a positive way in that, certainly in that arena is a good thing. So, and we did. You say the old saying, you save one life, well, we saved more than one life compared to the year before. We had a total of 3 overdoses out of the 41 this year, and we had 49 overdoses last year with 7 fatals. So that's pretty good. I was pleased with that. Because to be honest with you, this isn't going away. It's just it's here. So, and over the holidays, I don't know. I got a lot of positive feedback from residents and from business owners who we had extra foot patrols in the center, especially on Saturdays. People are doing shopping and stuff. It was reassuring to them. Of course, with the end of the year and the holiday season, we did have the package thief that got locked up that certainly impacted quite a few area residents as well as local residents. We dealt with the issues of the medical marijuana. The police department participated in Stuff a Cruiser event for the area toy drive benefit, and they looked to stuff 1 and we wound up filling 3. And we did a mock exercise in conjunction with the fire department and some other area agencies. Chief Greno, heading up the fire services, he brought in the chief from Duxbury, and they coordinated it. And it's about, so when you go into like a school shooting, it's about having warm zones. Or if you go into the town hall and you try to designate warm zones that would be guarded by police, where medical personnel can get in and treat the injured, so that, like in Columbine, there was a teacher that could have gotten out, didn't move, and he bled out after 11 hours, but had they gotten to him, he would have lived. So it's just the dynamics change as it evolves. You learn what's good, what's bad, what could we do, what couldn't we do, and and that's good. Anytime we can all train together and learn together is a good thing. So
Thanks, Chief.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, we've read your report too. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions, because we'll be spending time with you now anyway.
There's just one typographical in there. You see that the fire runs are listed as about 1,100. It's actually 1,077.
Okay.
John, hello.
So we have the Finance Committee here. Welcome to the Finance Committee. And the Chief is going to be making a joint presentation to the board and to the Finance Committee with respect to his budget request for next year. We thought the best way to do this was to do it jointly.
This is just a copy of the PowerPoint. You guys can follow along if you want to.
I'm looking, I can't find it.
Thanks, Chief.
So I won't take up much of your time. Basically, I met with the Finance Committee last week to present my budget, and in my budget is the request for the addition of 3 firefighters. And I thought it best appropriate to present the whole package to the Finance Committee and to the board at the same time. So if there's any questions, then we can bounce them off each other and we can go from there as to how things go. Some of this PowerPoint you've seen from my request a few years ago, but I've tweaked it to kind of drive the point home just a little bit harder. Basically, as you know, 1965 is when we went to a full-time fire department, and at that time, we had 5 members per shift. In 1973, we added the ambulance service to the fire department with 1 BLS ambulance. We maintained 5 members per shift. Current staffing levels at the fire department is 5 members per shift. and it's the same staffing levels that we've had since 1965. This is our call volume comparison. If you see in 1965, we did 496 runs. In 2016, we did 2,664 runs. You can see that there's a steady incline year to year. Calls aren't going down, calls are increasing. So 1973, 961, 2664, 60% of what we do makes up EMS responses, 40% of what we do makes up fire responses. 1973 to 2016, our call volume has increased 177% with 5 members per shift. We're still doing the same thing that we did back then with 5 people. 177% more, we're still doing it with 5 people. Staffing studies. Same staffing studies, and I looked at some new ones, so these are all the organizations that I looked at for staffing studies, as to where the town of Whitman should be for our population and for our call volume and for our patient care levels. Where should we be? And these are the different institutions I looked at for those studies. So currently, this is how we staff with the 5 members on duty. The first EMS call, if it's a priority call, it gets all 5 members out the door. What a priority call is chest pain, shortness of breath, seizure, overdose, cardiac arrest. That gets all 5 people out the door. The first EMS call, if it's classified as what we call a non-priority, sprained ankle, a fall, broken arm, something orthopedic, that's 3 people out the door. So that's the ambulance and the shift commander. The second EMS call that comes in, you get 2 members in the second ambulance generally. Those, the 2 remaining. You might get the shift commander if he's available, if he's not tied up on the first call. Or if he didn't do a 3-person transport with the first ambulance, because those are common also. So what does the National Treatment Standard say? We're pretty good on the first call out the door. 4 persons, most critical task, at least 80 seconds faster. 4 people on the call, on the priority call, is the ultimate. 3-person is okay, 2-person is substantially less. Second EMS calls, or EMS calls that are secondary to a fire incident, are somewhere between the 3 and 2-person, substantially less effectiveness in patient care. That's where we stand today, and to me that is unacceptable. Case review, history repeating itself. The town of Whitman is great with our history. In the past 3 years, we've had 2 cardiac arrests. 2 cardiac arrests. One of the cardiac arrests had 1 person respond to it, because that was all that available. 1 cardiac arrest had 2 people respond to it, because that was all that was available. No call back in the station, nobody coming in. The second one, they performed basic life support CPR for 15 plus minutes until an ambulance got there from the Brockton Hospital, one of my ambulances. Overdoses. I had 1 person with the police respond to an overdose last summer, all by themselves. CVA, stroke, cerebral vascular accident. We had a walk-in who was suffering from a acute CVA. The first ambulance had just gone out the door with the shift commander on a non-priority call. The priority 1 call comes walking in the side door. 2 people to treat him. That was it. That's unacceptable treatment in my eyes. Current fire staffing. Full staffing, you get all 5 members out the door. Any other time, you're either getting no staffing or you're getting insufficient staffing out the door. So if there's an ambulance on the road, you're getting at best 2, maybe 3 people out the door. The consensus standard on NFPA 1710, this is how it affects firefighting. 3-person engine companies, 4-person, and 5 persons. Now, these percentages in the standard is based on holding the fire to 1 room. So 3 people out the door, 4 people out the door, or 5 people out the door. History repeats itself in Whitman. In the past 3 years, we've had 2 house fires. Both fires were $20,000 to $25,000 fires if we had full staffing. They turned into $100,000 losses of these houses in town. Several $100,000 losses of residential homes in town because of inadequate staffing. We were less than 38% effective on 2 structure fires in town. Critical facts, 18% of the time, which is 492 times in 2016, the fire station was empty with nobody available to respond. Nobody was coming. You were going to rely on mutual aid companies. Generally, that time period is anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour when there's nobody available to respond. 2014 in 2014, and we switched to new computer software 2 years ago, so I can't get the simultaneous emergencies out of the new software currently. But in 2014, 236 times, we had more than one incident going on at the same time. Our call volume has increased by over 6% since 2016. So that 236 is a raw number. It's much higher than that right now. And what does simultaneous incidents mean? Substantially less effective patient treatment and 38% or worse fire control is what we're seeing in the town. Currently, the second ambulance is not responding on a small percentage of calls because of the staffing. Because if you have that first call that comes in for chest pain and it's a cardiac arrest or whatever, all the people are tied up on that call. And I'll get to that in a second. So what are the key points and what's going on in town? The patient demographics that we're seeing in town have changed substantially over the past couple of years. We are seeing baby boomers that don't want to call the ambulance. They wait. They have respiratory problems, they'll take their asthma, they'll take their inhalers, they'll do breathing treatments, they'll take their medicines, and when they're speaking 2 to 3 word sentences, they'll finally call 911. They are sick patients, they are extremely sick patients, and they are requiring 3 or 4 people in the back of the ambulance just to get them stabilized. On the other side of the spectrum, we're seeing a different group of demographics where they're calling us for everything. They wake up in the morning, they have a tummy ache. They call 911 for an ambulance. Callback. The callback system that we currently run, we run since before 1965. It's an unreliable system. It does not work. You cannot ask a firefighter to work a 24-hour shift, do 14 calls, go home, and come back at 10 o'clock in the morning because there's 2 calls going on. They have second jobs, they have families, their wives work, they're stay-at-home people. The callback system is an antiquated system. It simply does not work. Sure, sometimes, like, we'll get 5, 10 people on callback because everybody's around. But the majority of the time, we're doing an all-call, which is everybody that's off duty is eligible to come back, and that's after going through 2 groups where you might get 1 and you get none. And out of that entire all-call, you might get 2 or 3 people to come back. Other than that, there are plenty of times that we do a 1 person needed because they'll do a 3-person transport, so we try to maintain 3 back in the station. More often than not, 1 person needed to go unfilled, nobody comes in. So it leaves 2 people back in the station. More often than not, we'll have a cardiac arrest and they'll page out what we call a code red, which brings everybody in off duty that's available to respond to the code and help the on-duty crew. There's been several instances where it's just the on-duty crew and there's nobody coming in. So the callback system is antiquated, it's unreliable, and it's unsafe. Adding a person to the shift gives us a swing person. It gives an additional member on each shift. It's a swing member. It increases safety, it increases the fire tech success, it increases the patient care outcomes, and it leaves me somebody back in the station that can put that second ambulance in the road and meet the shift commander there or meet the engine company there and have 3 people at all second calls the majority of the time. What's my proposal? My proposal is to add 3 firefighter EMTs or paramedics. I want to provide at least 6 across the board, 24/7. I'm not trying to meet national standards. I'm not trying to get the big pie in the sky. I'm just trying to get us so the majority of the people that we see and in the majority of the responses that we go to are fair and equitable across the board. This is a goal to increase efficiency, productivity, and patient care. That's what I'm trying to get at. I've looked at it before. We've all had these discussions. I've looked at it. My predecessor has looked at it. My predecessor tried an override, I think 12, 14, 15 years ago. It didn't pass. I've looked at grant options. No success. I don't agree with the grant option. The grant option still holds the town responsible for full funding of that grant 2 years after you grab that grant. Abington has a grant right now for a SAFER grant. I believe it's this budget year or next budget year. They have to eat the entire amount of that budget, of that grant. I don't think that's a survivability for us, and I've never applied for that grant again because I don't think it's fiscally responsible for us to go after that. Fund the positions within the levy limit. We've tried that. No success. Fund 1 person a year. over a number of years. I've put that in the budget over the years. It gets cut out, with no success. So my final bite at the apple, the last time that you'll hear me talk about this, is to fund these 3 spots outside the levy limit. I'm looking at $292,648, or round off to 292.7. It's 19 cents on the tax rate from the assessor's office, and the average home of $291,413 would see a $56.18 increase in the tax bill. And those numbers are out of the assessor's office. The fiscal responsibility is the benefit far outweighs the cost on doing this. Far outweighs it. So what does it give us? It gives us 6 people per shift. It improves patient care. It improves firefighting. It improves overall public safety in the town of Whitman. And we're moving in to the 21st century positively, not stagnant as we are today, trying to make ends meet and trying to cover calls, which we can no longer do. And that's what I have.
Thank you. That's a very clear report, Chief. Thank you very much. I'll open it up to questions of the Chief.
Chief,
Response from the Finance Committee, anyone? Yes.
Frank has.
no, go ahead.
Mike.
When you have a call and you send 2 vehicles, is that, you count that as a one call, or is that 2 calls?
One incident.
One incident?
That's one incident, yep. Yep. Years ago, back in, I want to say we changed it back in 1979 or something to that effect. Every time that a vehicle went out the door, it was one other call. That was switched back in the, I want to say late 70s, early 80s to 1 incident, 1 call number. That's it. You could have 20 vehicles there. It's a 1 incident number.
In one of your slides, you said the national safety standards were 4 guys out for critical.
Yeah.
And you sent 5.
Right.
What about, have you given consideration to 4 out and keeping that extra man back for the second call?
We have, but the problem is, and what you're doing is you're breaking up the 2-person engine company. So you would be sending 1 guy out all by himself in the fire truck, and that's not a good practice to be in at all. So what generally happens is you get a call for chest pain on Pine Haven Drive. You'll send everybody out of the station to Pine Haven Drive. You'll get a second EMS call, say down on South Avenue. The policy is if they have to go by the station, they stop and pick up the second ambulance. It just so happens that frequently, the second call is happening in the same district that the companies are in. So the fire truck is going, and they're getting a mutual aid ambulance.
Say that again.
If the policy that we have is if all 5 people are out of the building and on the first EMS call, and there's a second medical call, say on the other side of town, if they have to pass the fire station, either the engine or the shift commander stops and picks up the second ambulance. The problem that we're having, or we're seeing, is that the second call is happening within the same district of the first call. So they're not passing the station.
And your concern is not to send someone out without an ambulance because of the need for equipment and
Right.
potential
Right.
treatment?
The 2 cardiac arrests that we had, if there was a 6th person back in the station, then we would have put at least 2 people on the scene of those cardiac arrests with an ambulance, with the equipment that they needed. Sure.
You had said that the callback system is antiquated and
Yep.
doesn't work. And you had said that, you had mentioned that in the support of the extra man per shift, that it seemed like you were saying that would alleviate it. But in our conversations, you had said that even if we were to get the 6th man, you would still call back.
We would have to.
The 6th position.
What we do now is that's talking 2 different things. The 6 people per shift is this proposal is to have 6 a shift and maintain 6 a shift. So have 6, staff to 6. That's what this town needs. Actually, this town needs 7 to maintain 7, but 6 I'll be happy with. The callback side of it is when all members are tied up and busy working in the street, we call back people to cover the station. So what's historically happening is when 3 people, we have a boatload of 3-person transports. And what a 3-person transport is any psych patient, we put 2 people in the back of the ambulance. Sexual assault, 2 people in the back of the ambulance. Overdoses, generally get 2 people in the back of the ambulance because of the workups that they have to do. Priority 1 patients and priority 2 patients generally get at least 2 people in the back. So we try to maintain 3 at the fire station at all times to cover that next call. So by running 6 and maintaining 6, we'll be eliminating that 1-person callback, and we'll be eliminating some group callbacks where we still have 3 people or we have 2 people and this and that. It's not going to fix the broken system, but it's going to put a Band-Aid on it and help it.
Last question, sorry to
No problem. Other questions you want?
in your multi-year ambulance fund projections, you
Yep.
put in for 1 new position every year for 3 years, I think it was.
Right.
4 years, whatever.
Yep.
To fund a firefighter out of your ambulance account.
Correct.
And then at the last minute, you pulled it back, and I think you said that it was because you were tracking lower than expected for revenue in the
Correct.
ambulance account. Is that something that you're still?
So the problem right now, and I'm glad we did that, because what happened last year was our revenues were tracking lower than what were anticipated by several $1,000s, like $20,000 or $25,000. We try to budget our capital revenues at around $820, and I think last year we ended up spending $761 out of the ambulance revenue account. What's happening now is with the governor's task force for health insurance and trying to reduce health insurance costs across Massachusetts. There was a meeting 2 weeks ago, and there was lengthy discussions of the health committee, and you'll find this surprising, but nobody from public safety or from the hospitals or from private ambulance companies were invited to on the meeting. It was strictly insurance companies, and they're looking at cutting costs of health insurance, which is a great thing. But they're looking at pre-hospital operations, such as ambulance services. They're looking at walk-in clinics. They're looking at, across the board, how to reduce rates. And one of the proposals is to take ambulance transports, which we do, and reduce them down to the Medicare and Medicaid rates across the board. So no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter how you treat, no matter who you have for insurance, the most that you would be able to bill is what the current Medicare rate is, which is about $220 a patient. We would lose $500,000 a year. That's just a rough number. My administrative assistant is working on the numbers now to see what that loss would be. But that's the initial proposal. We think it's a bargaining tool. We think it's their first, let's throw this out there and let's negotiate and find a comfortable number. But right now, we're bringing in Harvard Pilgrim Blue Cross patients on like a cardiac arrest, and we push in 3 or 4 meds with EKG monitoring and intubation and all that stuff. We're bringing in $1,200, $1,300. They want to limit to us to about $200 a patient. That would be devastating to our department. Yep.
Anyone else have any questions?
I have a couple of questions, Tim.
Yeah.
If in fact that happens, and I'm not advocating this, but if in fact that happens, would it be advisable to turn around and say we do local ambulance calls, but we bring in out-of-town private ambulance service?
No.
Right. And my second question would be, you're talking about 292,000.
Well, Dan, I say no on that only because it's going to cost you just as much, if not more, to bring a private ambulance company into town. Number one, they're not going to be interested in giving us 2 ambulances, what we have right now, at the ALS level. Or they will, but it's going to be for about $800,000.
Oh, they'll charge the town then?
Exactly.
I didn't
And then they'll
understand.
take all the insurance
I didn't
money.
realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, we're talking about $292,000.
Yep.
I guess this is a question to you and to the finance committee. 292 sounds like a lot of money, but it isn't a lot of money in
Right.
one way.
You're right.
Is there any way we can do this within the levy limit?
The Finance Committee has had some conversations about that with the chief,
Yeah.
about doing at least the majority of it within the levy limit, within the existing budget, actually. taking out of overtime funds. The funds that I think are on the article that you just mentioned, I don't think that covers all the potential new overtime that we're going to incur for funding a six-man shift.
It does. It calculates everything. The 292 covers benefits, it covers all the contractual obligations, it covers everything.
So I guess one of the things that we still have to talk about, Finance Committee and the Chief, is whether we can use some of the overtime money, and I think we're at odds on whether we backfill to 6. You know, if we go to 6, and the Finance Committee supports 6 men per crew, and somebody is out sick or on vacation, and leaves the department with a 5-man crew, do we call for the 6th, or do we bring the person back in for the 6th, or do we stay at 5, because that's what we've always been? And I know there are some other issues that the town would need to address, putting that aside for a second in a perfect world. Financially speaking, I think it's better off for the town to do that, but to the chief's point, that's great, but that defeats the purpose of the 6-man crew, because sometimes you'll be running with 5, sometimes you'll be running with 6. And so that's
Right.
So Mike and I talked about, we talked about this during the budget, my presentation I had. And I totally understand where the Finance Committee is coming from. Their job is money, my job is public safety. And we have a very difficult time and sometimes can't do it with 5 people a shift. That's why I want 6. So I ran back to see, and I did a calculation today as to how many shifts that we have to fill a year. So how many times that, like, if we had 6, how many times a year would we drop to 5? We have 644 contractual shifts that we have to fill every year. 644 open shifts. If we could hire 6 and drop to 5, we would be no better today than we are tomorrow, because every shift would be running 5 people. And it would be no gain, no benefit, no nothing.
And that's the only benefit, it sounds like it would be financial, right? So we wouldn't have to save on that overtime.
Right. I'm just looking at,
And Dan, to answer your question, the town is able to increase its levy 2.5% each year, and it's based on the prior year's levy. This year, it's going to be approximately, I haven't done the math yet, but about 650 is what we'll increase our levy. And whatever we get in growth, perhaps another 200. So now we're at 850. I haven't seen the school's request yet, but I understand they're looking at a 6% increase. Our insurance is going to go up. Just our health insurance is going to go up $150,000. All of our fixed costs increase each year by 4 to 5%. And the only thing that enables us to keep up with it is the combination of growth and increases in the levy limit. We're not expecting to see much support from the state in terms of increased state aid. So the practicality is, this is our bailiwick. This is our job to address, and there's only a couple of ways to do it. You find other things to cut, and frankly, we're going to be challenged to do that, or you find additional sources of revenue. Now, we have had some. We got the meals tax, which helped us to address our OPEB issues. We still have the Plymouth County retirement costs, which are accelerating each year in order for us to make up for the shortfall in that account. So if Tim is right, if he's looking for additional money to add hires, and frankly, I think the 292 is a hopeful estimate. I think it's going to be more.
Conservative.
The only way to do it is people will have to agree to pay for it. And the only way to pay for it without cutting other budgets significantly is to agree to increase the levy limit. And the only way to do that is an override.
And quite honestly, that's all I'm asking. As fire chief, my job is to come before you and present to you the state of the fire side of public safety in the town. And as fire chief, it's my job to advise you what I believe that we need to provide proper public safety. And I'm not in the ballgame to take from other people's budgets. I don't, all of the department heads in this town work very close together. We support each other. If you motion today to take 20,000 from each department, I'd say, no, I don't want the guys. But that being said, we've looked at all the other, alternatives, and nothing really works because we've already taken, Frank, I believe, over $1 million out of the town's operating budget over the past 5 or 6 years. At least $1 million. There's no money to go around. There's no money for growth in this town. Nobody's departments have grown for any substantiality in years because our hands are tied every time that we go through the door. The police chief, I believe, is going to report that he didn't fill, I think, 392 shifts. 728, I'm sorry. And that's not right. But my job is to give it to you, and I would ask you, all I'm asking for is to let the taxpayers have the final say in this eventually. I'm looking for your support to move forward, give it to town hall floor, let town hall decide.
I don't have a, I think what you're asking is very minimal. I mean, I know my son's in public safety in Natick. He's come with me with the same things and the problem that they have, and they're a huge fire department. But I'm looking at under 300,000, and it is a lot, but it isn't a lot, you know. And I'm looking at, I'm saying, if we ask for an override for that amount, you know it's going to be a lot more than that because the school's going to probably come back and look for something.
Well, that would be one thing that I would ask is if there were multiple overrides going forward, that this is its own question.
Okay, that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. I'm saying now you're asking the people to make a choice,
Right.
and that's a tough
Yep.
thing for them to do.
I would just ask that this be its own question and stand on its own merits. And, you know, I would do my homework and I would get my word out, and if it passes, it passes. If it fails, it fails. I've put the word out. I've demonstrated our need, and let the cards fall where they fall. It's the way I look at it.
Anyone else? Anyone else from the Finance Committee want to chime in? Okay. Thank you, Chief, for the sobering report.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. It seems like we ought to be able to come up with $290,000. You know, I mean, we're heading into an era of prosperity, right?
Yeah.
Things have changed.
That's what we told.
We're going to make Whitman great again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Couldn't have said it better myself. But,
Whitman was always great.
That's right.
Always great.
you know, I've been party to some of the correspondences between you and Sean Kane on the Finance Committee about planning, long-range planning. You know,
Right.
the need for the town to maybe sit down and try to forecast what's going to happen over the next couple of years. Sounds like a good exercise. Until you hit your head against 2.5%,
Right.
the 2.5% raise, until you hit your head against the number of departments that have been at that persistence, that subsistence level over a number of years, till you butt your head against the schools being in the bottom 5 or 10 of support across the Commonwealth out of 350 towns. That's something you don't like to think about. But something has to happen, and whether or not getting the town or focus groups from the town to come together and try to sort some things out over a long-term basis would help. I don't know, but it might be worth some sort of an effort. Although, and it did keep me up last night because I was away last weekend and I saw your emails last night. So you kept me from sleeping, Sean. Thank you very much.
At least you were one
I used to
night.
have something to do with strategic planning at Massasoit. For years I was in charge of it. And one of the things that I recall is that in order to plan logically. It needs to start off with people coming together on what they value. Statement of values, that your goals and objectives for a 3-year period of time, 5-year period of time, 1-year period of time have to be based upon what the group values. Sounds great, until you start figuring out what it is. And so you start ranking them. And you know that public safety is going to be near the top. It's going to be one of the things that we value as a town. We know that economic growth is something that we want to encourage as a town somehow. We know that educating our children is something that we want to take care of somehow. We know that the health and welfare of people who are experiencing difficulties, like in the opioid crisis, are things that have become part of our values. But once you get all of that set up, I just couldn't make it any easier to myself, because all of those things are important. And so I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure where to go right now, except it becomes a political event, I think. And the political event is to try to convince the people in this town that Whitman is on the verge of being great again, and maybe an override can be successful. Because without an override, we're probably not going to go anywhere.
And I think you saw that in my email correspondence, is all that is good, and you can sort that out, and you can build your goals and your values and your strategic planning as to what you want to see. But bottom line comes down to money, and we don't have any.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to throw water on what Sean was getting at. It's good to be thinking about these things.
Yep.
I also thought about a survey. I mentioned this to a couple of people before the meeting. There was a survey done, 10 or 15 years ago, of fathers. And it asked, it was a group of fathers, and it asked them what they valued most in life. Number one thing, they asked them to rank the 5 things that they valued the most. Number one thing was, of course, their children. Of course. Not their wives for some reason, not the mother of their children, but the children is the most important thing. And then it asked the same people how many minutes a day they spend with their child or their children. And the answer was 17.
Wow.
17 minutes per day. Now that's something to think about when you start thinking about value statements and long-range planning. What does that mean? Well, it means, one, either they're lying to themselves about what's the most important, or number 2, they have to do something to rearrange their activities and so that they're spending more time on the thing that they think is important. Or it could mean something else. It could be that they have to take themselves away from their children so they can work 2 or 3 jobs in order to provide for their children. There's a lot of things that are going on.
And I suppose you could look at that as public safety, because if you were to ask somebody to list the values in life, fire and police response would be on the bottom of their list, because it's the last thing they're thinking of until something happens.
I really don't know about that.
No?
No, I'm not sure about that.
Well, you're going to have family values, and you're going to have relatives and money and this and that, and then you may put in there, a full-time fire department, a full-time police department. Like is what I'm saying, and that's down here compared to what your priorities are, like basically, until the day comes when you need it, and there's nobody there to respond.
Do you want to say something, Frank?
I think that the level of funding that we provide in proportion to our revenue for fire and police say a lot about how important people think public safety is in Whitman. And the same would apply to schools. Our challenge is our income base and how we derive our income. Being a residential community, 93% of it's going to have to come on the backs of the residents. And what people have to decide to some degree is what kind of community they want to be. If you look at surrounding communities, and I'll use Norwell as an example, and people say, Norwell, that's a whole different ballgame. It isn't. It's different because those people have committed their resources to making it a better town. Whitman could be much more than it is by making more of a commitment to funding the things that are important to the town. But people are so pressured today with expenses, and we've had some pretty tough financial hits over the last 10 years. And even if the economy is getting better, I'm not sure I'm willing to buy that yet.
Well, actually, it has been getting better,
It is getting better, but
but not,
House values are
the
up.
sense is things are bad. People haven't come to the point to say, well, we're better off than we were 3 years ago, even though we are in most cases. So it's a concept of value, just what Carl said earlier. You know, you have to look at all of the things that are important to you and determine how to value them. And then, since a lot of these rise to the top, you have to make a commitment to support it. And we can start that process. Certainly, there are a number of people in town that have made an effort last year to help raise money for the schools, but it fell short. They keep hearing the same things year after year, not because we won't give up, because that's what's needed. Your community's identified in great part by the services that you provide to those residents, and all of these areas are important. It's just making the translation to the average person.
Frank, I have a question. If in fact, this is what we decide to do, doing an override, having it two different ones, if the school comes back and they need an override, it has to be two, because you need Whitman and Hanson to approve an override for the schools, right? But we only need Whitman for our own town departments. So I don't think you could even put them together. You know what I mean?
actually, that's a good point.
Sounds,
It's a very good
sounds right.
point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes, if, we can't predict
I'm
what
sure the
our
Hanson
people are
Fire Chief
gonna
would
do,
love
and we
3 more
can't
guys.
predict what Hanson people are
Right.
gonna do. But in terms of the school, we're joined at the hip, it has to happen in both towns.
Right, but as far as
In
our town
terms of this,
department.
it has to be a
Right.
decision of the people of Whitman, do I want to fund this?
Right. So that, just wanted to make that point so that, and I still think it should be done with, I don't see why it can't be done, but we'll see what the numbers are.
And this number was based on a firefighter medic with an associate's degree with 1 year of employment. So there's no trying to catch up with step raises or anything like that. And then $13,000 for benefits and $13,000 for contractual obligations. So,
Thank you, Chief. And
thank you.
thank the Finance Committee for coming together tonight. You people, I don't know how you do it. You're the hardest working group of people in town. You meet every week for a long period of time, dealing with things that are very difficult to deal with. When I was on the school committee, I hated the Finance Committee. 'Cause I just didn't want to appreciate what they were doing. It was always like this. And sometimes the school committee won, and sometimes those bad people on the Finance Committee won. But I tell you, you're like my CIA. You're my favorite people. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Seriously, thank you for what you people are doing. You work harder than anyone I know. And look forward to town meeting when we get to sort it all out.
Thank you very much for having us.
Carl,
Thank you,
just to
everyone.
remind the Finance Committee, South Shore Vortex is our budget meeting tomorrow night. Okay, someone needs to be there. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we're going to go into executive session in a minute. Set the February schedule for us.
Can we look at the 14th and 28th, would that work?
Valentine's Day? Sure. 14th and 28th. Okay.
Yeah, I probably won't be here on the 14th. 28th is fine.
14th and 28th.
Love, wonderful.
And I only ask that because the Finance Committee has asked to meet with me on the 7th.
Okay. The 14th. Okay. Looks good to me. That's all right.
Yep.
14th and 28th. Okay, around the board quickly, anyone have anything they want to say for the good of the cause?
2 things.
I was about to say hearing nothing.
They're actually both interesting things. The Southeast Symphony Orchestra has requested to use the auditorium on Sunday, May 7th, and on Sunday, December 3rd, to offer concerts to the citizens of Whitman.
Nice.
May 7th is after the town meeting and before the election, and should provide sufficient time to do that. In addition, the American Red Cross has requested the town allow them to use the auditorium on, I'll find the date in a minute, April 4th, 2017, it's a Tuesday, from around 11 to 7 to run a blood drive.
Okay.
And I would like to recommend that the board approve all three of those requests.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that it?
That's all I have.
Scott?
No.
Brian? Danny?
Nothing.
We need to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and of the public body. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, yes.
Vote?
Yes.
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 And we'll be returning in open session only to adjourn.